Today on Scattered Abroad, you'll get to hear part 1 of the interview with Keron and Camillia, a young married couple from the island of Trinidad. Joined by their 2 children in the natural ambience of their country home, the couple discusses how lust for the world and the pride of life turn to a deep and obedient love for God.
My story began where I was, if I give a little piece of me in the world, was party going, alcohol, say drugs, and, just living as the youth would have it today, enjoying life. And then eventually, I seen that it was like a never-ending cycle of things, and I decided that I wanted Christ. And, that led to God doing things in such an amazing way that I met certain people and, now hereby accepting the country living message, didn't know that, because I couldn't have purchased land, but didn't know I was actually following a principle whereby, you go with someone that is older, you help them in terms of their country building, and they was just able to say, well, here you go, here's your little parcel to do what you have to do on it. And that's how my story came to us being here, my part of it.
Okay, so what's the other half?
Well, I had started to watch Walter White quite some years ago, and from my experience, I didn't adhere to the things that I was hearing as quickly. So it took about 4 years. I could actually count it out, from when I started to receive the messages, from when I actually started to practice keeping Sabbath and these things. And my state was not good. I had got, at the beginning of that year, I had attended at least almost all the, what would be considered fetes in Trinidad, and at the end of that year is when I had gotten baptized.
Wow.
God made a transformation quick to grab me out of the world and into his arms. And even before that, I had started, making little changes based on what I was seeing in terms of diet, in terms of exercise, and I was looking for land, So I had met Karen at my home church, Shiloh, and from then we started missionary work together, and then he brought me up here for the first time. I remember my mom was quite disturbed why you would want to go in the bush for lack of better words. And I remember the first time I came up here, all I could see, I was like, this is one banana land, because that's the most that I was seeing, banana trees all over. So bit by bit, God was leading me. And it seemed like it would have taken long for me, but he knew what he was doing, because he was working on Karen's behalf and he was working on mine too.
Wow. So did both of you grow up Adventist?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, my background actually has going to church in it, but what happened was there was this, you go to church on Sunday, you come home, and then whatever. So at a point in time, I started to question exactly, what am I doing going to church? I'm feeling like a hypocrite because I'm allowed to partake of Carnival, little alcohol when I was smaller, and it seemed like it was double standard. Right. What I was seeing in the world and in the church, it was basically the same. So I said, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. It's either I'm in the world or I'm in church, and I chose the world at that point in time.
Well, I think I was always searching, because throughout my years I was a Roman Catholic before, and I would constantly be in, out. It had certain things I question, like, sometimes how when you go to church, they don't encourage you, at least in my experience, to open your Bible for yourself.
Right.
They have readings, yes. You probably learn 1 or 2 texts, yes, but the atmosphere is not really geared towards motivating you to study your word as much as there are books that you chose to read. First Communion I went to, Confirmation I went to, the works, but no effectual change was really wrought in that, because it's not allowing you to know what you believe in for yourself.
Right.
I remember when I started to go to church in the Adventist church, my mother was like, you was baptized already? Well, baby. Baby baptism.
The sprinkling.
Yes, basically the sprinkling. And she was like, but you do that already, so where is it going? I said, well, if I were to judge where I am now from that baptism, I did not hold it. Therefore, it warranted that I go and do it again, because I know different things now, I'm practicing different things now, and it's something that I need. So basically, almost no one popped up for my baptism.
Wow.
You know, my ex-boss managed to come after. But other than that, nobody. Everybody that I messaged, nothing. And like God wanted to have me go through that experience with me and him alone, it seemed.
Wow. So, Keron, you had mentioned that you had come from a lifestyle a little bit longer than Camillia, but in the fetes and the different partying atmosphere. And there are a lot of young people struggling with that right now. A lot of people in the world, a lot of people of other denominations, and even within the Adventist Church, those who are choosing to leave this standard of life, these God-given principles, and go into the world to test it out for themselves. So I want to ask you a little bit more about how God led you out of that whole realm that you were used to for so long.
Oh, okay, so it basically started with there were some members of my family that they worked with certain mass camp bands, that we call them here. So they would work in terms of making costumes and these type of things. So that made it a easy access for us to be able to get to go and jump up in a band easily, because, you know, yes, that's the family member to this one, so we have, you know, that free access. And what had happened was, by being started putting us in kiddies carnivals so early, I could remember having kiddies carnival costumes straight into Juve bands and then into what we call the big people mass.
Wow.
So we just went from bottom right up. We just followed how it went along with the passage of time. So we were just in everything. To speak to the youths on the aspect of changing, there were many other aspects of it besides the carnival, the carnival realm. We used to lime on the block, what, you know, fellas would call these days liming on the block. So we would lime on the block, and you would realize the type of language that we would use. So, you know, it's always, you know, heckling one another and dirty jokes about who's mom and, you know, these type of things. And continuing that lifestyle, I realized that there's a kind of a popularity, or what they call today peer pressure, that you have to live to a certain standard. So if you do have the latest and the this and the cars and the girls coming in your home and these type of things, you're not really accepted in society as someone who is, you know, cool or hip. And you're always trying to please your friends. You want to be what they are, and you want to think. So I know, while I was going to church before and I spoke about being a hypocrite in church, I know there were things that I was doing that was not Christian or quote unquote church. And eventually it came to that place where I would just struggle mentally, because I saw the popular ones living that type of lifestyle, that they have people following them and they always want people to be around them. So that type of acceptance too. And eventually I chased after that. So I had people, you know, following me, and I would talk very slackly and use type of words and things, and people would start to realize that, hey, you know, he's hip, you know, he has the girls, he has the look, the style, this. So a lot of people was gravitating towards me, and I feel like I actually got what I see all the other young people at my age at that time had, in terms of the followers and these things. And you know, with social media now, the whole issue is followers and who is trending and these things. So in every way, every youth is looking for acceptance in that degree. And I had thought I had reached the pinnacle of where it could have been. I had the girls, I maybe didn't have my cars yet, but eventually I got a car, and, you know, it was living this lifestyle that people want to follow, they want to be a part of it. So in our own way, I felt like it was your own God at that point in time. And I noticed I had to upkeep that lifestyle, and upkeeping the lifestyle was much harder, because it basically living a lie.
True.
You know, so you have to upkeep that lifestyle. So you have to spend money on things people wouldn't spend money on. You have to always have a look here. So, because the day that you decrease is the day, like, oh, they say doggy dog world. As you decrease, someone fights to take your position. So you always need to remain, how we just say, on top of your game. You always have to be on top of your game at that point in time. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting to live that lifestyle. So to the youths who try and keep it, I know it's basically living a lie. I know it's living a lie. And you basically lie, and having to keep up with a lie is very hard than just saying the truth. So you lie here, and eventually you have to make sure the lie coincides with what you do, how you live, you know, how people perceive you, and that's maintenance. That's hard. That's maintenance in itself. And it came to the point I was totally fed up of it. I realized it was just too much, and I said, Lord, I need you. I need to escape. And I could remember this moment where I was now heading to work, and I reached this place where there's two roads that I have to walk, but I don't know. I'm not like experienced, say talking about visions, but it's like at that point in time the Lord told me, in life now there's two roads that you have to choose. There's the road that you give your life completely to me, because I had moments in between whereby I wanted God, and one of my brother who was of a certain religion, brought a Bible for me. So that was my kind of first interaction of having my own personal Bible. Wow. But I was still struggling because you read it, it makes no sense. You throw up your Bible back in the cupboard. Dust on the Bible.
Right.
So I left it there, and I had that situation where I came to that place where like this vision was clear before me. You have two roads to choose. And at that point in time, I said, Lord, I already know what it feels like to live, in the world and have people follow me and these things. So I think I'm going to choose you at that time, but I didn't know the string of events that was going to take place after. And I said, Lord, I'm going to choose you at that point in time. Certain individuals came into my life at that time and started to talk to me about the Bible. And at that point in time, I was home at time, and I went down on my knees. After all that happened, I went down on my knees and I started to cry. And I said, Lord, I need you to intervene in my life. I don't want to live the life that I'm living anymore. And I was about to go outside. And the Lord had told me, not to go outside yet, because back in the old area, how we live in these areas, houses are very close. So I have to step out of my house to wash. And it so happened that when I was about to leave, I believe the Holy Spirit now told me, don't go outside as yet. And I found that strange, because that was the first time I had that type of probably interaction with what might have been known as a higher power or whatever is the case. And when it says not to leave yet, I said, okay. And I stayed in there, I gathered up my clothes and my whatever it is to wash. And then eventually it says, all right, the Spirit told me, go outside now. And when I stepped out, there were these two folks walking through my community. And I was like, Lord, it cannot be that religion. And I only said that in the aspect of, there's a particular religious group that does a lot of missionary work, I wouldn't say by name, So I said, Lord, it cannot be that religion. And eventually I walked kind of, casually behind them, because I didn't want to receive what they were giving and things, because I usually know what they give out and things. But when I come up behind them, the lady turned on and she saw me, and I saw she had a book called The National Sunday Law. My dad had that book in his house, but I never had interest to read it, because thinking it's just another religious book. Then they had one called What's Behind the New World Order. And I said, hey, I never saw that one. And I took it. It had the Pope in front of it at the time, the present Pope at that point in time. And I started to read this book, and it talked about the persecution of the saints and the Sabbaths and this thing. And in my life, I was experiencing some of that, because when I now was accepting these changes, remember I said keeping the lifestyle that you had, a lot of people tend to imitate you. But now that I was living a life that I was changing, a lot of people was calling me man of the cloth and pulpit and priest and these things. And
kind of poking fun.
Yeah, they were poking fun at me at that point in time. And I eventually said, why all this persecution for doing the right thing? And I started to realize through that book, when I accepted the Lord, there would have been a lot of heckling and persecution, as that's what I would have called it at that time. It was persecution that I was receiving. I was like, I know I'm doing the right thing because I'm receiving persecution for it. And that's one of the instruments that God used to bring about that change in me. And I don't know for anyone who ever had that experience, but I always remember that one whereby I know the Holy Spirit told me not to go outside at the point in time, and then when it told me to go outside and to meet these particular people, and that had to be God. That was an experience that I hold dear to me since that point in time.
It's so encouraging, first off, for you to be so honest about that worldly lifestyle and how exhausting it is to, keep up that facade, that picture, and that's the truth, and the truth will make you free, right? That's the truth, and that's not said very often. So I'm hoping that some of our listeners, even those who are striving to have that type of worldly success and image, would hear these words and would realize that it's really all vanity, But I want to talk a bit more about the persecution aspect that both you and Camillia have experienced. Even and deciding to come out into the country. Camilla, what did you have any opposition to that? Your family, friends?
Yes, I did. You know, my family couldn't understand. My family couldn't understand it because I have qualifications. I have passes. In the world standard on paper, I'm very smart.
For instance?
Well, I have 8 passes. That's enough to get you into almost any job. You know, involving getting money and being able to be well off, and in what would be common practice down here. You know, no man don't have to tell you you can't do this or you can't do that. You could maintain yourself. You know, so we often push that image for women because it's either you end up on one side or the next. It's either you be dominated by a man, or you have enough that you ruling over him.
Got you.
You know, so both of them are not in God's plan and design for a marriage or even any relation or anything like that. He's supposed to have a housemate.
Right.
Or
A house
a
band.
companion that could work with you and grow with you and strengthen you and, you know, keep you encouraged in the Lord. And I believe he picked just that for me. Now, when you usually hear of someone having something to offer, and you know, my husband, well, my boyfriend at the time, came to my mom, I don't think she understood that courtship leads to marriage. So, you know, he explained himself, you know, he has land, okay, that's great. He has, you know, promises to build a house, okay, that's great, you know. We didn't have a vehicle as yet, so alright, we'll work on that, okay. But that's all. I'm here, money in the bank, I'm here, good, you
Job.
know, solid job, nothing like that. These people have to be crazy. You know, who in their right mind will settle for something like that, having qualifications,
Exactly.
the ability to go and work. You're free by yourself, you're young, you're now starting. And I just had in mind what God wanted. I've looked at the characters of David and his former training, Moses, and his retraining, Elijah. You know, the times where God was able to talk to them, the best I would say is in a quiet atmosphere, an atmosphere that you're able to hear him clear. You know, and I've seen that not only in my life but in the life of my children, where they are quite different from what I see out there. You know, the hustle and bustle, continuously moving, you know, not being able to settle down, having... I see some things that parents have to go through now, people who are children around my time, and it's like they up all 12 o'clock in the night and these children would not sleep. They would not.
How could they with so much going on?
It have a lot going on, and you know what happened that time? We had not finished building the house yet, and we came up here for, I think it was the Christmas season, and then we went back down, and because there were lights outside, Carnivals would not sleep.
Wow.
Because
it was clearly affecting her system.
Exactly. So you know when it's morning because there's light, and you know when it's nighttime because there's pitch darkness. There's nothing to see. All right, let me just go and sleep. And we had that experience, and I really got encouraged that God knows what we need. He knows how much hours in the day you need to do what you have to do, and you will do according to where you live, no much more than you can do. When that night reaches, it's going to be hard to try to struggle to stretch yourself further than the day would have carried you, using a phone light or using a flashlight. You would eventually get tired and be like, well, nah, all around me saying nighttime, let me go and sleep.
Exactly. Wow. What a clear principle. Something that a lot of people wouldn't see in that, you know, coming to the countryside where you're kind of put back into a state where God would have an ideal state, you know, where your body... your biological clock, your circadian rhythm is even in harmony with the nature around you. And you said something interesting when you were mentioning Moses and David and Elijah and their former training. So I want to ask both of you about your trade, you know, what trade you might have or what skills, interest, and how either maybe it's something that developed in the world seemingly, but then God somehow showed you that you could use it for his glory.
Yeah, okay. With me, well, I didn't come out of school with, you know, the passes that you know, my wife did. But what happened was, after school, I decided, I'm going to do a trade. And I went and did electrical, at that point, in electrical installation. That's domestic electrical. And, I came out with all the, excelling in it and coming out very good. But as I said, that was also in my Woolee time.
Okay.
So again, there was a retraining for me also too. So when I came out, my dad is a mason, so he would build, he would do some carpentry and stuff. But the thing is, what he pushed me academically in terms of getting your education, having your passes so that you could get a job and sit down and do these things. But what I saw missing was the fact that I didn't know how to build a house. I didn't know how to run a home. I didn't know how to do these things. So God had a retraining to do on my part also too. And having the electrical skill, at that point in time, remember they only train you in that one specific field. So you didn't really know how to do a little bit of masonry, some carpentry, either if it's auto mechanics or whatever it may be. You may just have auto electrical. So in that way, it still only limits you to the abilities that you have. And as I said before, that was part of my Woolee years. What happened? My mom died when through secondary school. I was around 13, 14 years of age, and she passed. And my dad having to work, still pushing the education. It would have still been hard because now you don't have both parents to give you, that time and attention that you need. And when that happened, I eventually came to that place whereby, still being Woolee and whatever is the case, and coming to that point whereby, all right, you just have electrical trade, but there are still things that they cannot do. My mom passing, in the earlier years, I learned to cook, I learned to take care of a house. So many people may say it's a negative, life has taken a bad turn on me. But looking back at it now, I know how to cook for my family because my dad working, I had a brother there and a little sister that I had to take care of. And, I learned to cook. I learned to take care of a home. I learned how to run things in the home because my dad would have been able to say, well, here's what goes on, I'm working, I can't afford to make the groceries, so I'm going to leave you with such and such amounts of money. You have to learn to, how to make groceries and plan your meals. So that in itself wasn't a negative, and many things that we look at in life as sometimes we think it's negative. I think in losing my mom would have been a negative on my life, but coming to this day and age, I realized I've learned actually skills of how to properly take care of a home.
Wow.
And eventually being out here in country now, having just that electrical trade, I realized that did not work because you live in the bush, there's no light poles, there's no... So what am I going to do with electrical in the bush?
Right.
That in the country, that doesn't make any sense. So the folks that I dwelt here with, the guy actually know how to do some auto mechanics, he know how to do some carpentry, he know how to do masonry, and I would just sit and just watch him and then I'd be like, I could go back and do that. And I would
just
go
by watching,
and I don't know what the word they call it, but there's where someone could look and be able to repeat. So I saw him, and then I would like, I'm going to try that, and then I just started to go and I made my little mistakes, but then I was like, oh, so that's why he did this, and that's why I did. So the connecting dots in my head, so I already had it when I was early in my earlier school years because my parents told me I was very brilliant. I skipped a few classes because they said I was above the class that I was in, and they skipped me a few classes ahead. So I know I always had that academia to say, but what went on was I think the loss of my mom created a gap whereby a key part of your life is out now, that consolidation that you get from your mom and that warmth and loving part. To somebody to tell you you're doing good or you're wrong. My father, he was there, but he had to work because he had to keep the household running, and he would be out most of the time. But yet still, being put in that situation, it's like a Joseph situation. I've been, taken away from my family, but I had to learn to grow or to become more stable in society, and it helped. So I learned to cook. I fell in love with cooking, and I learned a lot of skills through cooking, and now it's actually one of my major talents in terms of making health food and this type of thing. And Now I've learned a little masonry, I've learned a little carpentry, I've learned a little auto mechanics. I've learned a lot of different skills, and plenty of them was just by, watching, but with prayer. I don't want to leave out that. It was actually with a lot of prayer. I always used to say to God, quoting that text from James, say, if any of you lack wisdom, all you need to do is ask, and the Lord will give it to him.
Liberally.
Liberally.
Yes.
And upbraid it not. So I saw God did that in my life in terms of teaching me things that I did not know how to do. And what you see here based on today, the size of the house is help, but the frame and how everything that is structured in such a way is things I've learned and keep trying. And it's not perfect, but it functions. And that, I think, is the best part of what I see have teach me skills in this home. The house is able to function. We're not getting wet when we're sleeping. So, God has brought me a long way in terms of, thinking that the academic side has been lost, but it has not been lost. He wanted us a lot more hands-on, and even being able to study the Bible today, God has shown that difference in terms of, they would say, well, hey, somebody would think you came up with no passes, how are you able to teach the Bible in such a way? And that has to be a God-given gift. Not man cannot do that.
Amen. Wow, that's amazing that God just pretty much equipped you both with the skills to be able to even start a life out here. And a lot of people are even afraid to make that step because they're thinking, I don't know how to build a house. I don't know how to really do anything. I don't know how to cook, and they don't want to make that step. But you both, your lives are living testimonies that God just put it all together. And as you look around the home, like you said, it's a reminder of, well, I learned this skill. We're not getting wet and whatnot. And you mentioned even cooking. Are you the cook of the house pretty much?
Yes, I was the original cook of the house, but my wife have talents of her own, and
I'd like to hear a little more about that too.
I don't know if she would like to acknowledge it, but yes, I'm the one who helped her in her cooking.
To hear more of Keron and Camillia's testimony, be sure to check out part 2 of the interview. They'll talk about acquiring skills, young marriage, and the adjustments of country life.
He opened up ways that I can have even a country living experience. And, oh my, that was a journey.